Hello, hello, hello. This is Gresh from the I Am CEO podcast, and I have a very special guest on the show today. I have Kristen Harcourt of KristenHarcourt.com. Kristen, it's awesome to have you on the show.
So great to be here, Gresh.
No problem. Super excited to have you on. And before we jumped in, I wanted to read a little bit more about Kristen so you can hear about all the awesome things that she's doing. And Kristen Harcourt is a executive coach and professional speaker. And for more than a decade, she has helped executives and emerging leaders in hundreds of organizations worldwide achieve extraordinary and sustainable results through increased self-awareness, emotional intelligence, and mindfulness. She's a big believer in compassion and authenticity and conscious leadership. Kristen's mission is to help leaders transform from the inside out, creating a meaningful career and purpose-driven life where they can reach their full potential. Kristen, are you ready to speak to the IMCO community?
I am ready and excited.
Awesome. Let's do it. So I wanted to kick everything off by rewinding the clock a little bit, hear a little bit more on how you got started. Could you take us through your CEO story? What did you get started with your business?
Yeah, absolutely. So for me, it began 3.5 years ago. I had been working in corporate for over 15 years, and I'd had the entrepreneurial itch for probably 15 years, all of those 15 years in corporate, but surrounded by a lot of risk-averse engineers in the family, accountants in the family, married to an engineer, who all felt that we need to be pretty stable with our jobs. And eventually the itch just got to be a little bit too much, and I had to take that leap of faith. I think for me, leaving corporate and starting my own company, what the really driving force for that is I wanted to be able to create every day, decide what my business was going to look like, let it evolve, see where I'm being pulled. As a speaker and coach, I want to decide the type of people that I want to work with from a coaching perspective. And then from a speaking perspective, I really knew that I wanted to go out there and make an impact and use my voice for positive change. And I felt in corporate, I was a little bit limited about what I was able to speak on, and kind of being told I felt like I was a bit inside the box, and I was ready to really jump outside of that box. And honestly, 3.5 years later, it was the best decision I ever made. I'm so happy I did it, but I do also want to acknowledge it can be a little bit scary sometimes to be taking a big leap and going into the unknown and not knowing exactly what that's going to look like.
Yeah, absolutely. I appreciate you acknowledging that. And I love the word that I heard is kind of like the evolution of the business as you start to figure out, who you want to work with, how you want your business to be. And that's not something that even I found that it happens on day one. A lot of times it's through trying things out, having, doors that open, sometimes doors that don't open, that allows you to kind of get that insight into how exactly you want to grow that business.
Absolutely. And sometimes it actually gives you an opportunity to pivot. So I say to my daughter every day, I ask her as a 10-year-old, how did you fail today? So that she starts to recognize that failure is not a bad thing. It's not about you're a failure. It's that when one thing doesn't work, if you hadn't have taken the step for that, whatever you tried there, you wouldn't have gotten to the next step, right? So it's allowing yourself the permission to experiment and explore and try different things as you start to find what really is calling you and what really allows you to be in that zone of genius and use your natural gifts and talents.
Yeah, I absolutely love that. That's so powerful, a lesson for your daughter. And I think obviously a lesson for all of us as well, too, because I think so many times when failures or things don't go as we want them to go, sometimes you can stop in your tracks. You cannot continue to move on and take that action and take those steps. But if you kind of have that ingrained and you understand that kind of failure, or even success isn't final until you stop, and you understand that finish line doesn't come until you make that decision to do that. It's one of the most extremely powerful things you can know and have in your arsenal.
Absolutely. Yeah. I honestly think a huge part of being an entrepreneur is mindset and
Mm-hmm.
how we look at things. And when we see setbacks, do we see it as something as, oh my gosh, and make it about us and we did something wrong? Or do we see it as, okay, this is an opportunity. What are the possibilities with what just happened here?
Yeah, and that's extremely powerful. And so I wanted to drill down a little bit deeper. I know you mentioned mindset, and I'm sure that's something that you kind of work on with your clients. Can you take us through exactly how exactly you work in your products and services and how you serve the clients you work with?
Yeah, absolutely. So I personally have a sweet spot for working with leaders because when I transform leaders, there's a ripple effect, right? So leaders, whether that be leader in organizations, whether that's business owners, whether that's founders, quite often they're working with a lot of other clients or working with other individuals that when they start to transform and impacts how they show up in their day-to-day. So what I really love doing with leaders is helping them to I like to say it as connecting both with head and heart. So a lot of times with leaders, they can be doers, they're high performers, they're making things happen. And a lot of times there's a reason why they've gravitated towards leadership. But sometimes what can get lost is how are they being as the leader, right? Every day you have a choice around how are you showing up? How are you impacting the people around you? And so for me, it's helping leaders to take a step back and go on a little bit more of an inward journey, right? Really figure out, who am I? Who do I want to be? How do I want to show up? What's really important to me? Because a lot of times through a lot of conditioning, we do things based on what we think others will expect. We're living out some of the driving factors, or living out what our parents wanted for us, what our teachers wanted for our friends, our family, everybody else's expectations. So I really help leaders to take a step back to really recognize who they are, showing up as their authentic selves. And I like to say, we live in this whole instant gratification world where we want everything to happen overnight. It's a journey. And from my perspective, it's a journey that never ends. So it's, from my perspective, it's really helping leaders to understand why that's extremely, extremely important, but also a gift to spend that journey on really figuring out who they are and how they want to show up in the world.
Yeah, that's extremely powerful. And I think, so many times while you were explaining that, I was thinking of the foundation of a house. And I think so many times, as you said, we're worried about, the drapes or making sure the windows look right. But if we don't have that foundation in order, if we haven't done that inward work, not only might we say something, but if we aren't saying what's in alignment with who we are and what we're showing in so many other ways, they can create a type of confusion, makes us sometimes not the leader we even hope to be as well.
Yes. Yeah. And I like what you just said there too, because that's part of the work that I do, is getting people really clear on their core values, so that when they're making decisions, they're clear, is this alignment with who I am and what I want to do in the world? Or am I doing this because it's a should, right? A lot of times people do things because of the shoulds, and that's not really them. That's doing what other people expect. So also recognizing that we have an operating system, everybody else has another operating system, and they're seeing everything through their lens and their perspective. So what does it look like to recognize the people around us and realize sometimes the values are not the same, but that's okay, right? Not taking it personally. So much of the work is, what does it look like to not react, but take that step back and pause, and then really intentionally respond to the people around us? Because a lot of times we're taking things very personally that aren't actually meant to be personal.
Yeah, absolutely. A lot of times, and then sometimes, and I've had experiences, I'm sure we all have, where sometimes you kind of have to take a step back and say, maybe it's not even about our interaction. Maybe it's about something else. Maybe there's, something that I don't have no idea about. But I think when you have that powerful kind of ability to obviously see from your vantage point, but also take into account others' vantage points and their perspectives and their experiences and things like that, and at least hold that as a kind of a filter for our decisions and our actions, it's an extremely powerful thing.
Yeah, absolutely. That's why I'm so passionate around emotional intelligence and mindfulness, right? It's training our brain, and then also from an emotional, because our mind, right? We create these stories, these elaborate stories, and they're all made up, right? So it's like, is that story really serving me or serving the people around me? Maybe I'm going to question some of those stories. And then from an emotional intelligence perspective, the more we can understand ourselves and why we're doing what we're doing, and then expressing in a way that's powerful, that really lands with the people around us, and then also recognizing the emotions of people around us, right? It all has such a wonderful impact in the way we're able to deeply connect human to human when we really work and grow in that way.
Yeah, absolutely. It's an extremely powerful thing. And as you said, being able to kind of work with leaders, you have obviously that impact on that person, but because that person is a leader, it has that ripple effect as well. And so do you consider kind of like that ability to kind of look at the mindset and also that emotional intelligence piece, your secret sauce, the thing you feel kind of sets you apart and makes you unique?
Yeah, I love that question, because I think that, when I really think about what makes me unique and kind of what attracts my clients and when I'm speaking and different things like that, I think part of it is really me showing up authentically and coming from a place of compassion and fierce courage, right? Because part of it is also holding up a mirror. And sometimes when you're holding up mirrors to leaders, other people were a little afraid to hold up the mirror. And I'm saying, guess what? This is what I'm seeing. These are the behaviors that are showing up. So I think it's that authenticity, and I think it's helping if I'm teaching others how to lead with both head and heart. Well, it's really important that I'm modeling and also showing up with head and heart. So every day I'm very intentional around how I'm showing up in the world, right? How am I connecting with the people around me? And I think what happens is people will see that and then they think, I want a little bit more of that. I want to be able to feel excited and fulfilled. And while I want to be successful as a leader or an entrepreneur or founder, I also want to have fulfillment, right? You get to have both. It's not one or the other.
Yeah, absolutely. You don't have to choose one or the other. You can choose both. And that's kind of like that affluent kind of mindset and understanding that. So truly appreciate that perspective. And I wanted to switch gears a little bit, and I wanted to ask you for what I call a CEO hack. So this could be like an app, a book, or a habit that you have, but what's something that makes you more effective and efficient?
Yeah, I'm going to have to say a couple because I'm always working on this.
Mm.
So what I would say is morning and evening ritual are game changers. I think that when you are very, very intentional about how you start your morning and how you do your evening. And so I'm always my morning. It's just an hour, right? So that hour is, I commit to that every day. I don't look at my phone or social media or anything till I have that hour, which is doing a little bit of yoga, some meditation, gratitude practice, setting up my day, right? What are my intentions? What's important for the day ahead? And then I'll do a little bit, the last 20 minutes of either reading or listening to a podcast. All of that, just an hour, I could do all of that before I start my day. And then in the evening, I'm always making sure that I ask some questions. They might change, but right now my questions that I ask at the evening is, what were my wins? What did I do really well today? Where did I struggle? And how can I learn from those struggles? Then what am I going to do differently tomorrow based on what I learned here? So that's a really important one. The other thing that I'm very cognizant of as an entrepreneur, as a leader, there's a lot of noise out there. And so I think it's really important that we're constantly taking a step back and asking ourselves, what's true for us, right? So, there's a lot of people that are listening to this podcast that are business owners and entrepreneurs. It is very easy to be pulled into a lot of busy work. So I think it's really important every day to be asking yourself, what are the top priorities? Are these actions going to move the needle? Are you working on the things that are actually truly important to be able to do what you're trying to achieve with your business, right? So I think sometimes we can get so much into working in the business that we're also not working on the business, and making personal development always a priority. It needs to be something that time is blocked out every week for personal development, because that goes back to what I was saying in the beginning. It's not only about what you're doing, it's who you're being.
Yeah, it's extremely powerful. And again, kind of when you sharpen your saw, you have the opportunity to help others sharpen their saw too, and gives them that reminder. But I love, all those hacks, especially like kind of the bookends of the day and being able to kind of have those questions that you do at the end of the day, but also those things that kind of set you up for the best possible day as well. Because you kind of, sometimes the middle of the day can be kind of wonky at times. But if you have and can control those two different aspects, it allows you to have that likelihood of having a successful day and a win for the day.
Yeah. And then you're showing up more mindful, right? So when the day-to-day happens and there are the setbacks, you're able to get grounded and centered and bring yourself back better because you've had that practice in the morning to set yourself up.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And so now I wanted to ask you for what I call a CEO nugget. So that could be a word of wisdom or piece of advice. It might be something you would tell a client, or if you hopped into a time machine, you might tell your younger business self.
Yeah. So I think if I were to go back and speak to myself when I was first starting, one of the reasons why I wanted to start a business was to be able to create what I wanted to create and think outside of the box. So it's important to continuously hold on to that as you're starting the business. I remember when and you would know about this as being somebody who works in marketing, when I first started, there's so much noise out there telling you what you need to do, right? If you're starting a business, you need to do this, 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 this. And then as you're growing the business, you need to do this, 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 this. what works really well for one person is not going to necessarily work as well from another person, because it's what energizes you, what resonates with you. And so and I'm constantly doing this with myself. So I would say always take a step back and ask yourself what feels right for you, and trust the answers that come to you, because there's always going to be people telling you all the things you need to have. But it's really discerning what really matters to you. And the energizing piece is so interesting, right? Like, so social media, for example, I love social media. Like, I love going out there, building community, connecting, doing all of that kind of stuff. So of course I'm going to spend more energy there, because it's just in my zone of genius. It's in my sweet spot, right? So I think it's really paying attention to what feels best for you. And then the other thing is, I think, remembering, it's so easy to always be like, oh, I haven't achieved this and I want to do this, I want to do this. So we're always like going up this way, but we're not taking a step back and turning around and say, look at all I accomplished in the last year. Look at all I accomplished in the last 2 years. We can be so focused on where we're going, right? Entrepreneurs, we're ambitious, we're driven, we want to make things happen. Go, 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 go. We sometimes forget to take that step back and constantly celebrate all the milestones along the journey.
Yeah, that's so powerful. And I'm sure a lot of people that are listening to this are pretty much that go, go, go type of person. And really how important it is to kind of obviously have that go, go, go mentality, but also be able to kind of celebrate the wins, celebrate the days, the months, the years, whatever that we've been able to kind of put in and grow. And I think that when you have that kind of mentality, you have that kind of outlook, it can help you to understand the ups and downs that go with running a business and how far we've done, even if we have like a bad day or a bad moment or have a bad client or a bad experience, whatever it is, it's a small part to the overall story and book that we have in our life.
Exactly, right? We can be so focused on, I've heard this so many times with speakers, right? They'll go up and do a talk and they could have 100 people who did the feedback form and said so many amazing things. And then there's the one person who I like to call the porcupine. Oh, you were terrible. You did this, like all that kind of stuff. And the speaker for the next 2 days could focus all on that one person, but not acknowledge all of this amazing feedback they got around what went well. And I'm not saying, of course, we always want to take constructive feedback. Amazing. But you see how there was all the focus and all the negativity as opposed to all the positives, right? So I think it's really important to mindset again, right? Put it all into perspective, and let's be kind to ourselves. I got to tell you, I can't tell you how many times this shows up. The self-talk, right?
Yeah.
Let's have self-compassion. Let's have grace with ourselves. I was just talking to my husband yesterday, and he's being really hard on himself. And I said, you would never speak to your friends like that. You'd have no friends if you were speaking to everybody else like that. So why is it okay for you to speak to yourself like that? Like, let's really pay attention to those words that we're using and how we're speaking to ourselves, and being super kind and super patient and having a lot of grace with ourselves as, we have those days that don't necessarily go as well or have setbacks.
Yeah, they definitely don't go according to plan. And I love that. I love kind of like that mentality and that information, that the mindset that you spoke on too, and even how to, when you listen to that feedback as well too, taking that step back, as you mentioned as well, and being able to understand, is this kind of what's going to help me get to where I want to be? Because sometimes bad advice or the way that a person has done it or does do it isn't necessarily the glove that fits on your hand as best as it should. So truly appreciate that. And so now I wanted to ask you my absolute favorite question, which is the definition of what it means to be a CEO. And we're hoping to have different quote unquote CEOs on the show. So Kristen, what does being a CEO mean to you?
Wow, that's really a powerful question. To me, when I think of what does it mean to be a CEO, I guess what I really go to is, what does it mean to be a leader? And because I think as a CEO, you're getting to be a leader, to go out there to make an impact. And to me, when I think of being a leader or CEO, it's a wonderful opportunity and a gift, but it's also a responsibility, because you're going out there and you're modeling to everybody else what it looks like to be a CEO. And so I think it's about reminding ourselves every day that we have a choice about how we show up, who we want to be. And those moments when we are feeling really stressful, maybe we need to take a step back and maybe not go have a dialogue with someone, not go make that phone call, not go send that email. It also kind of, to piggyback to that too, too, to me, it's also reminding ourselves when you think about being a CEO too, what's your definition of success? And always checking in with yourself around, are you continuously staying in alignment with your definition? Because for me, success is not just about financial and right how you're doing financially or the accolades or the recognition you're getting. For me, it's around every single interaction, right? Every single time I talk to somebody, I have an opportunity to create some sort of shift, to be kind, to be loving. And so I think that's the part that's we have to be responsible for as well, is really recognizing what's our definition of success, what's our why, and really making sure that we're always in alignment with that why every day, and not looking at other people's outside their definition of success, but our definition of success as a CEO.
Yeah, that's extremely powerful, and I love obviously that leadership piece that you mentioned as well too. But also, again, kind of what we've been talking about during this interview is just how we can be a leader and how we want to be a leader. We don't have to be a leader as far as how somebody else is leading or whatever that might look like. So we can chart our own path ourselves. So truly appreciate that definition. I appreciate your time even more. What I wanted to do is pass you the mic, so to speak, just to see if there's anything additional you can let our readers and listeners know, and of course, how best they can get a hold of you and find out about all the awesome things you're working on.
Yeah, thank you, Gresh. I feel like sometimes I don't get to say what I want to say, but you have such amazing questions that we had such powerful dialogue that I don't feel like, here's the words of wisdom, because I think you gave me an opportunity to share that. So I would just say, I'm a love connecting with people, human to human. So anyone who wants to reach out and just have a conversation, please do that. You can find me, my website, KristenHarcourt.com, and all of the social media is Kristen Harcourt as well. I'm really about building community. So to me, anytime we have a connection, have a conversation, that's what it's all about. So I'd love and welcome anyone who'd like to reach out and have a conversation.
Awesome. Thank you so much again, Kristen. We will have those links and information in the show notes as well, too. And I think, as you said, one of the beautiful things about being, human and being able to connect in so many different ways is to be able to develop those relationships and learn so much. And I appreciate you for giving us so much words of wisdom and advice and information on what it is that you're doing. I continue to hope that you have a phenomenal day, and I appreciate your time.
Thanks so much, Gresh. It's been a wonderful pleasure to be here.